Kaduna State in the last 2 years may have become one of the epicenters of banditry attacks and kidnappings in the northwest of the country, with several people abducted from their homes, schools, hospitals, or even while commuting.
I lost my classmate, my friend.
The recent abduction of 121 students of Bethel Secondary School in Chikun local government area, followed by Sunday's abduction of the Emir of Kajuru and 13 members of his family at his residence, are just a few of the latest attacks, with several others going unreported.
What will I tell her? What will I tell her?
Figures from the second quarter security report are alarming.
774 citizens were kidnapped, 222 citizens were killed, 266 sustained injuries as a result of this. There is a looming food insecurity because thousands of farmers are unable to access their farmlands.
This meeting of the Kaduna State Security Council is to review the situation and identify areas of improvement. Worried about the attacks, Governor Nasir El-Rufai calls for simultaneous and unconventional approaches to the fight.
There are simply not enough boots on the ground to have credible deployments in most places to protect communities, deter crime and enforce law and order. Therefore, the state government must be empowered and supported by the federal government to make up the manpower deficit in the security sector. An unconventional approach is required to enable us better protect our communities.
In the meantime, there is a plan to contain the situation.
We have been quite okay, that no matter what happens, we may not have enough. But we have been given the directive to carry out that instruction. So all vulnerable schools will be monitored and surveillance will be mounted in these schools. That was a directive given by the Commander General of Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps.
Casualty figures from the bandit attacks are high, but the agony of loss of lives is even more gripping. Citizens and residents in the affected communities can only hope that the nightmare will end sooner than later.
No. I didn't expect it.
Well, that's the next conversation we're having now. Colonel Yomidare joins us this morning. He is a retired Army officer and former director, Army Legal Services. He's currently a security consultant. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on board.
Yeah, let me take a historical trajectory to begin this conversation. Progress as we go. When this whole insecurity thing started with the kidnappings in the Niger Delta, it was just there. And then the next thing we began to hear about pockets of insurgency in the northeast, but specifically in one particular state. And now it seems like the only state we are talking about, largely, most of the time, is Kaduna. And with the release of that report from the Kaduna state that in 3 months there have been 222 people killed and 774 people kidnapped within just 1 quarter of a year, what really should we be looking at now? Because now it's just one state that is giving us this. One state was giving us concern before, now another state is giving us in a different region altogether, even though there are pockets of insecurity issues all over the nation. Exactly what do you think is playing out?
Thank you very much, Ayo. Honestly, listening to this report coming from the state government, it's really sad, very sad. Sad in the sense that if the state government can come up to tell us that 774 from their own records from their own records. And you know, usually, I mean, don't quote me, the government would not like, you know, to give you the actual figures. So if they can come up to tell us, I mean, you can be sure that this, in reality, the figure must be much more than what we have heard. So, what message does this send across? It's a red alert. It's a red alert. Nowhere is safe right now. Because what played out at the onset in Maiduguri region or the northeast is exactly what's been replicated now. Now you find government even telling schools to shut down. Okay? So, well, not too much of a talk shop, because what we should be looking at is solution. How do we get out of this?
And that's why I'm asking,
yes,
if we have even been able to decrypt the real issue,
yes,
that we are dealing with, what do you think we've been able to identify what the real issue that we are dealing with is? Well, we have the general, the broad term insecurity,
yes,
but shouldn't we be able to decrypt and then deal decisively?
Absolutely. In my opinion, to my understanding, I think what is playing out right now, the root cause of this, one, I think, is illiteracy, which is hopefully being addressed. But of course, how do you now even address this without security? So there's a challenge there. In illiteracy, poverty, there's abject poverty. Okay? And then we also look at the issue of marginalization, because that has been a recurring thing. Don't forget that Kaduna, I think it's about the fourth largest or most populous state in the federation, and is highly cosmopolitan. Okay? But again, the indigenes themselves, there's the problem that they've always had, you know, the northern and the southern Kaduna. So I think there's a lot in the hands of...
Who then is being marginalized here?
Well,
and how is this marginalization leading to this insecurity you're talking about?
Of course, if people are not happy, if people believe that there's no equity, there's no justice, okay? Because on the at the onset we had the herdsmen crisis, okay? And who are the herdsmen? Of course, the herdsmen are, you know, the Fulani people, you know, predominantly, okay? And of course, the southern Kaduna people are known to be farmers. And you know, typically, the farmers and the herdsmen. The herdsmen, they rear their cattle, and the farmers, you know, cultivate their farms. And when the herdsmen rear their cattle into the territory of the farmers, what happens? They destroy their crops. And you expect them to fold their arms and be happy? No, there's an issue there. And don't also forget that because of these crises, other criminal gangs have also taken advantage.
So, in other words, when, while we seem to be done with cattle rustling and all of that,
yes,
because, you know, there was also that huge debate about castigating one ethnic group as, you know, the criminal gang, you know, just as you have just done now,
yes,
which that one seems to have tapered down quite a lot. But the issue of kidnapping, yes, is what is, you know, on the front burner, so to speak, now. So I'm just wondering if we have been able to track it. You have listed a number of things,
yes,
you know, that could be responsible for it.
Yes.
So talking about solutions, the way you went about it, do you think we have even begun to deal with the issue or even identify what the issue is enough to be able to deal with as we should?
I think we have identified what the issues are. The problem right now is how to tackle these identified issues. And we have to be holistic. We have to be realistic about it. We have to be transparent about it. Okay? I recall that specifically in Kaduna State, there has been a lot of, judicial commissions, boards of inquiry. What are how far have we gone at implementing, the recommendations of these bodies? Monies have been spent in constituting these commissions. So a lot of their recommendations are just lying down in some offices on the shelves, gathering dust. How far? They should pick up these things, okay?
So,
and then, yes.
Pardon me. So when you say how far have we gone, you're referring to government?
Absolutely.
That's the Kaduna State government.
Absolutely, Kaduna State government. And I think at this point in time, too, the federal government need to step in.
Okay, we'll talk about that federal government angle, but don't forget the president in that interview saying that state governments should do their jobs, as it were, protect their states. And he referenced a few governors that came to Abuja, and he sent them back and said, well, you campaigned to be governors. So how about you deliver the campaign promise of securing your people? But I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I mean, you talked about poverty. You've talked about marginalization as some of the root causes of what we're seeing play out in Kaduna specifically, and perhaps across the country. But when a group of people come out en masse, kidnap students, over 100 students, for example, what we saw at Bethel Baptist School, and then they're demanding millions, tens of millions from parents who put their children in, I imagine how much they're paying as school fees. I imagine how much those children take to school per day. I imagine how much those parents earn. Clearly not as much. So if a group of people are demanding tens of millions from people who clearly cannot afford it, does it add up for you?
It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. And if you ask me, that's a failure of government. It shouldn't be happening.
No, I'm even saying that. How will the group, you do feasibility studies, right?
Yes.
It's not a business, clearly, but they will do feasibility studies. They mark their victims, and they know how much, at least they have an idea that this victim can afford this.
Yes.
So if a bandit kidnaps someone who clearly cannot afford millions of naira, and is demanding for millions of naira,
yes,
I want to believe that the bandits are not stupid. They know what they're doing. So I'm saying, does it make sense? Is this really about ransom? That's what I'm saying.
Well, you see, because the polity has been hit up and people have taken advantage, undue advantage, okay? Because here we are. What are we talking about? People are being, there's fragmentation here now. You have people going to have meetings, with insurgents, bandits. So when these people know where they are, and then they are being escorted by government, security agents. So, for crying out loud, they are not ghosts.
Are you saying that the government isn't doing the needful?
Honestly, I believe there's still much more for the government to do in the area of security.
Such as?
Because the truth be told, control of security is in the hands of the government. We say in the security parlance that security is everybody's business. Yes, it's everybody's business. But the command and control is in the hands of the government.
Okay. Well,
And furthermore, at this point in time, I believe what we should be looking at is beyond what maybe just the military joint task force is doing. I think we should also incorporate civilians into the joint task force operation. So the civilian joint task force, just as was introduced at the early stage of the Boko Haram in the Northeast.
I think that's a point that has been raised. And we'll get in some of the recommendations because the House of Reps had that security summit and they presented a report to the president
That's
highlighting
what I'm saying.
Some recommendations.
We've had summits over summits over summits.
Okay.
What recommendations? Have we implemented these recommendations?
I mean, fantastic point.
Let's even go back to the ones we had in Kaduna, because Kaduna State has been it has been a recurring thing.
Okay, so
From religion,
right,
to ethnic, to everything you can think about. Okay. And even recently, we have the labor crisis. Even right now, the labor crisis is still on.
Still sort of on. But I want to quickly touch on this before we move to those recommendations. Now, so the Kaduna State government gave out those figures, very alarming figures, really. And people are asking, or they've asked from time to time. I think even the IGP was in Kaduna last week, and when he was speaking with journalists, they asked him about motivating the men, and he said he was going to employ the reward and punishment approach, sort of. And I believe punishment means when there's a lax or when someone is caught napping, there will be some sort of punishment to serve as a deterrent to others. In terms of people taking responsibility either for the success or failure in this point, failures. Do you think there have been enough punitive measures? Because we see some security lapses and fingers are pointed to perhaps this person or this person. Do you think we've done enough punitive measures in that security area?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You see, because again, when you are pointing accusing fingers at the security bodies or agencies, when you go deep into it, you find out that there's usually some interference. Maybe they are not allowed to work within, to exercise, the full authority they're expected to.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. When you say interference, there is a law, and then there are functions, and then there is an order to go and get some things done. The primary function of the police, for instance, is prevention of crime, not fighting of crime. Do they need in what way can there be an intervention or whatever it is that will make them not to perform their duties?
Well, the situation now, as far as I'm concerned, is beyond policing. I mean, what the police can really handle. And that is why you have the Joint Task Force. Okay? The recently constituted Joint Task Force.
So how are they not allowed to do their jobs?
Well, I think that would be, that would be an issue for another day. But
what you just said now, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, because if that happens, then we could just as well raise our hands in surrender and say we can't deal with this anymore.
Well, how do you justify a situation whereby there are attacks or community leaders have informed security agents that, look, we have warning that people are coming to attack us. Okay? And indeed, the people came in to attack them. And until after the attack, nobody has come in.
That has happened several times.
Yes, that's what we're saying.
It's really debilitating. So the question then would be, what is it that hinders action on the part of security agencies when they have actionable intelligence? What do they need to do their jobs?
Don't forget that you don't even have enough security forces. You don't have enough. There's not enough. As we speak, I believe that the military is so overstretched. It's overstretched.
Colonel.
And then the resources, the logistics.
I can't remember
Nigeria,
right,
especially on the northern flank, the borders are so porous.
Colonel, we've heard this.
Yes.
I can't really say for how long, but for as long as I can remember, talk about underfunding, under personnel, as it were. I mean, you just referenced the porosity of the border. This is something we've heard for decades. Is it really hard? Maybe this is simplistic, I don't know, but is it really hard to solve this? I mean, just say, we need to resolve this. Let's resolve this.
Well, that's why we must, be holistic in our approach. to solving our problems. Because what we do most of the time is just talk. We have tea parties, summits, and that ends it.
The question is it difficult? Is it rocket science? Is it difficult for us to solve these problems?
I don't think so. And one of our major problems, again, apart from those root causes of those things we have identified, is corruption. It's corruption. Here we are, people taking advantage of a bad situation to enrich themselves. What about that? In this same country, we had what happened at the IDP camps when senior, very highly placed government officials had to inflate contracts of just to cut grass. They want to cut grass. You are not even talking about feeding. So there's a lot of problems. But we know what those problems are. But the thing is, we should be honest enough to stand up and solve this problem.
Yeah, one thing that the Constitution was clear about is who leads security in the country, and that definitely is talking about the police.
Yes.
So that leads us to some of the executive actions proposed by the House of Representatives following the security summit that they had. And a good number of those recommendations talks about the police,
yes,
strengthening the police force, equipping
yes,
the police force,
yes,
and things like that. I'm just wondering, because there are those who believe that the police was about the strongest, most funded, so to speak, agency of security in the country for some years before we got into the melee that we have found ourselves now. Even if we solve the problem of the police now, as in the police is able to do what they're supposed to do now, how do we sustain that? Perhaps that is the challenge, equipping the police on a sustainable basis.
You see, Ayo, let's be very honest about it. The police that we have, in my opinion, is a very strong police force. But we have gone beyond. You know what our population is right now. So let's break it down. What stops us from implementing state policing, community policing? Just because, ego, people just still want to just be in charge. In charge of what? There must be decentralization of the police force for effective policing, for effective management. The other time, when the IGP came on board, I mean, it was like, oh, withdraw all policemen that are not, you know, from politicians, from people who are not supposed to have them. But I can tell you, and you can take it to the bank, once you have your money, you can have a retinue of policemen following you without anybody even bothering what your business is. Should it be so? When we don't even have enough policemen, you know, taking care of the citizens.
So perhaps that's...
And right now, what you have is, you know, if anything happens, somebody is coming, the politician is coming to visit the community, he comes with a retinue of policemen. And then they all, and the moment he leaves, they all live with him.
So perhaps
and then the people are left.
Part of the recommendations. That should have been part of the recommendations.
Absolutely.
You know, interestingly, yesterday I saw a policeman accompanying a truck of goods. Just, but you know also
even these days you find soldiers too accompanying soldiers, which is very, very bad.
But we just talked
That's my constituency.
We just talked about the security situation.
Yes.
Right? So you might understand that context to an extent. The fact that, I mean, these are goods. They're meant to service a particular area, and they're not sure of the security of those goods, especially along the highways. So, I mean, maybe that's an argument for that. But, you know, taking a look at the recommendations, they asked for private security to be called into the fray, as it were, to be a part of this. Do you think there should be an extent to how far private security can go? Because, I mean, you see some headlines saying mercenaries. So how should that framework work?
You see, again, there must be a regulatory body authority. I mean, the private security companies, for instance, are managed by the Security and Civil Defense Corps, okay? The other time, the Office of the National Security Advisor made a public statement disowning a particular security body, okay? So there's so much proliferation such that you don't even know who is who. So there's need for us to properly regulate, okay? Let these people patronize genuine and approved private security organizations, okay? And I think we should also go beyond, say, restricting bearing of arms to the formal security agencies. Because right now, even the customs, they carry arms. I mean, the immigration, they carry arms. National security and civil defense, well, they carry arms. They all have armories. So you have these private security organizations most of them being, operated by maybe retired personnel who are already, used to the issue of arms. So once there's approval, once they are documented and, approved by maybe the Office of National Security Advisor or, NSCDC, as the case may be, they should be, they should approve and allow them to bear arms.
What about the questions of abuse?
Sorry?
Questions of misuse. I mean, we have issues even with
the police.
So questions of misuse of firearms, training, and what kind of firearms anyway should they be allowed to carry? How should that work as well?
Well, that's what I'm talking about now, regulatory authority. Because even right now, we're talking, arms are all over the place.
Well, we've heard that even from the president. But one of the recommendations that's also gone out there, and I think this is something that we should actually look at exhaustively, one of the executive actions proposed by the House of Representatives is that the executive should use all means at its disposal to require the creation of a protocol that will compel intelligence sharing among all security agencies. I'm surprised that this is even an issue, because I can remember as far back, I think, year before the last and last year, even this year, we've heard it from various sources, including the president, asking, literally giving an order for all security agencies to collaborate. Just recently, the National Assembly, I think the House of Representatives, also came up with the idea to look at all laws governing security in the country and looking at areas in which there are overlaps, separate those overlaps so that your living room is your living room, you don't overlap into mine, and in a manner of speaking. So in terms of collaboration, sharing information, what do you think is responsible for the various security agencies seemingly creating islands for themselves and not collaborating?
Well, because as we speak, there's a proliferation of security agencies. Okay? Too many cooks. They say spoils the broth.
I thought they said the more the merrier.
Well, not in this case. Because whether you like it or not, there's this rivalry. Okay? My Mercedes is bigger than yours.
Colonel Dari, I'm sorry.
Even in the US,
we are supposed to be on the same team, aren't we?
You remember what happened before 9/11? They had issues too. And everybody trying to, prove that, we can handle it alone, we are in charge.
So how can we deal with that issue so that rather than compete, so to speak, they are actually working together? How can we deal with that?
Well, I think the government needs to bring the heads of these agencies together, and then on the round table, I know they've been doing it, but we need to do more.
One of the challenges, just as we round off, one of the challenges that many have also raised, which may not be spoken among security agencies, is that while the police is supposed to play the lead in internal security, the army, for instance, is sometimes unwilling to follow the lead of the police. Do you agree with that?
Well, not entirely. Maybe in some cases, yes, but not entirely.
Why does that happen at all?
Well, again, I think there's need for each agencies to have what you call mutual respect and understanding. Okay? There is. So there shouldn't be, there's need to really educate, especially the junior ranks, because you find such issues coming up amongst the junior ranks. Okay, and then there's for example, there's no need for unhealthy or unnecessary competition. You know that the military is a force, the police is civil.
Well, anyway, I'm wondering why that will be an issue. But then, you probably know better than I do. We're completely run out of time here. Now, we have to thank you very much for being part of our conversation this morning. Colonel Yomindare is former Director, Army Legal Services, and is a security consultant. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.